including the balanced budget amendment, which we'll probably hear more about. And we almost got it once. A lot of people don't know. We were just one vote short in the Senate to get a proposed balanced budget amendment out of Congress. So I want to go here, again, I want to state the basis for my patriotic framework to defeat the enemies. Virtually everyone professes respect and admiration for the U.S. Constitution and knows, every citizen knows, that it includes a process for amending it. But if someone opposes using the Article V Convention option, then he or she is an unpatriotic constitutional hypocrite. When they openly oppose a convention, they are a constitutional traitor, and I like the word traitor, a constitutional traitor, replacing the founders' thinking with their thinking, putting themselves above the law, because it's very clear what the law says. Moreover, I want to emphasize it's impermissible to pick and choose what parts of the Constitution are supported and obeyed. And elected public officials who swear obedience to the Constitution, that Bill talked about, cannot pick and choose which parts to obey. Just not permissible. Such behavior makes a mockery of the supreme law of the land, the rule of law, and our constitutional republic. Silence by public officials on this issue is cowardly opposition to using the convention option. And I totally agree with Bill that Congress has flagrantly disobeyed the Constitution for a very long period of time. And by the way, we have brought up this fact in recent years, what seems like an infinite amount of times. I have a big presence on the internet. I publish on over 100 websites. I follow it very closely. No matter how often we bring up all these facts, again, 80 and 90% of the people writing in comments, calling me up, writing me emails, oppose. No matter what we say, they still have this emotional block or this intellectual block to using the convention. Big point. The continuation of the status quo will not eliminate the political, governmental status quo, will not eliminate the corruption and dysfunction in our government that people today are so angry about. We have what I call in my book, and I've called in a lot of publications, a two-party plutocracy. I'm neither a Republican or a Democrat. I'm against the two major parties. I'm against that system that basically denies real political choice to Americans. But my point is, many reforms can only be achieved through constitutional amendments that Congress will never propose. This is inarguable today to most Americans. Understand this. Voting in elections to get reforms is passé. It's useless. And I think that's what's most fascinating about the current events in our country, is that most Americans on their own, even if they're not heavily involved in policy and politics, basically have come to the same conclusion. You can't trust the government, you can't trust Congress to get the reforms into the system that the system needs to get a whole lot better. Amending the Constitution in our modern world should compete with ordinary elections. I think the founders had a wonderful view of the future. I think they foresaw the day when the public would lose confidence in the federal government. That day has arrived. It's here. Americans know it. So, convention, Article V Convention, see it as an alternative to the two-party system, two elections, as an alternative to voting. It's a new way to satisfy the public thirst for government and political and policy reforms. Interestingly, I did some more research in thinking about giving this talk, and it's fascinating to me that amending the Constitution, a lot of people don't understand it, can be done relatively quickly. I think people think, well, if you try to amend the Constitution, God, it's going to take all these years, maybe decades. It's not true. You look at the facts, and I'm not going to bore you with a lot of facts, but there were a number of amendments which didn't take long at all. The 26th Amendment, giving the right to vote to 18-year-olds, took only 3 months and 8 days to be ratified in 1971. My point is, public pressure works. If you get public support for amendments that become visible through an Article V convention, I think the public pressure will work to get those amendments into that ratification system and get them ratified. It'll work the other way, too. If the amendments don't make sense, then I think there'll be enormous public pressure. Even if they come out of an Article V convention, they will not get ratified. And that's the beauty of the system. By the way, Bill and I and others keep telling all these opponents to a convention, remember ratification. That's the safety net. That's the safety net. But they don't care. Again, the point about the intellectual block, that these people have been so brainwashed, so, they bought the propaganda, that they just don't accept this reality. Americans must be taught that just by being in the Constitution, the convention option demands public support. Citizens are obliged to support the convention option. There's no choice. There should be no choice. We should not think that there's a choice involved here. People cannot be allowed to have it both ways, to be two-faced and hypocritical. Embrace the convention option or be openly and aggressively condemned for unpatriotic hypocrisy and behavior that undermines the sanctity of the Constitution and the rule of law, both crucial for maintaining the integrity of our republic. Trust is the critical issue. So many Americans have lost trust in their government and politicians, and rightfully so, I might add, but far less so in the Constitution. The Constitution, on the surface of things, is still something that the American public says they trust. They trust it so much they've been taught to be afraid to make it better, even though the founders created this whole process for amending it to make it better. Trusting the Constitution means trusting the founders' wisdom in providing the Article V convention option. And let me end by this. We cannot know with certainty, no one can know with certainty, whether holding a convention would revitalize the nation. I think it would. But we don't know with certainty that that would be the outcome. But refusing to use the convention option as a constitutional path to reform disrespects and undermines our constitutional republic. That we know. The sorry state of the nation today, and I think it's in a very sorry state, demands that we do more than just talk about this convention option. This year, I think, is an interesting year for lots of reasons, and I think this year, every candidate for the House and Senate should be compelled to publicly support using the convention option, and lack of support should be grounds for defeating them. I would love to see the convention option enter the politics of the midterm election. There is no room for compromise with convention opponents. This is what I really want to emphasize. I think we've been too soft and easy, where a lot of us have been academics, or so still are academics. We write papers and articles, and somehow we think it's legitimate to have these discussions with these opponents to using the Article V convention option. Now, let's stop talking with them or to them, and let's start condemning them openly and publicly for, again, being unpatriotic and for being constitutional traitors. Thank you. There's some copies of my talk which will be available at lunch. Thank you.